Welcome back, everybody. The emails or the inbox is on fire here. I figured as much. We'll get to them. I promise we'll read them all before we say goodbye, including I got a rest in peace to the peanut butter Twix. I know I've had it on the list, and they don't even sell it anymore, which is disappointing. Our next guest has got a hard act to follow here. I told him that in break because there's apparently some other rankings we need to talk about as well. North Dakota State Athletic Director Matt Larsen joins us here on this Thursday morning after yesterday was the initial release of the only release of the FCS Playoff Rankings that came down yesterday afternoon. More importantly, you have a top candy, like I got to have this one.
I actually might be with you, Dom. I'm a peanut butter cup Reese's guy.
There we go.
Chocolate peanut butter, anything is sign me up. Now, we probably disagree on the rest of your list, but that one right there is tops in my book too.
That's what I'm saying. Number one and the Kit Kat is unassailable. 1 and 2, I don't think you can have any gripes with that. After that, it's fair game. I get it. That's
I told you,
what
Phelps was crushing you on the watermelon Jolly Rancher. At least go cherry or sour apple.
Yeah, no, apple one is nasty. No way. That's no way. I really appreciate the time this morning, though. I'm interested with your dual role, as obviously you're the FCS playoff chair. For this purpose, what are you allowed to vote for NDSU? How does that all go down? Can you explain that to people?
So, if a committee member cannot vote for their own team, and so we actually have it was neat the way we've done it this year. The last couple of years, we did a full mock selection. We used the voting software that the NCAA used, which is really good for our new members to understand. But you are blocked in the system, so when we're doing a vote, NDSU is on mine is blocked, and so on and so forth with everybody else in the committee. The one thing we have done differently, just because over the course of the last couple of years, having been on the committee, there's times where you could have 6 or 7 committee members out of the room. It is just trying to make sure that we're diving through and debating all of the right information before people leave. We've done some different things with voting to make sure we're keeping some of that knowledge in the room, but also not making sure there's any sort of conflict of interest. So I think right now we actually have a really good sweet spot in terms of that, and really the best of both worlds. So it's unique, but I think we've put some things in place that'll help make sure that we're really debating each team the way we should be.
So I guess maybe not pleasantly surprised when you saw North Dakota State ranked 1 when it was officially done. What were your thoughts on that?
Again, if I take off my NDSU hat for a second and I just look purely at resumes, I think the things that NDSU has accomplished this year are the reason why they're there. I mean, 5 top 25 wins, really strong strength of schedule, really good quality wins, not just top 25, but some really good wins. And so I think those were the things that probably, rose to the top. And I think for people to understand too is, and even as committee members, because we still have a long way to go. This really is a snapshot in time. We're not looking at, hey, what's everybody's next couple of games? What's it going to look like? Right. This really is, if the season ended today, this is where we think we would be. And so that was really important for us to keep reaffirming with our committee, but also to the folks that see it.
For fans in Bozeman or Big Sky fans, Matt, they're going to watch. Montana State hasn't lost a game yet. They have an FBS win. Mm-hmm. Why are they not ranked number 1? What would your response be to that?
Well, again, I mean, as committee members, we have a number of criteria that we take a look at. And we all value it a little bit differently. But I think at the end of the day, it's really looking at who has played the best against the best competition to date. And I think that's where I think NDSU probably got the nod. And you could go through the top 10, and I think that's where you see some things kind of shake out, just again, based on strength and quality of wins. And, those things still resonate. FBS wins are important, but as we've talked before too, is, no FBS win they're not all created equal. Yeah. Like all FCS wins aren't created equal. You can have 2 teams that are 7-1, but are 2 very different teams, right? And so it really is about dissecting how that team got to there, what makes up the wins that they have. And again, that's not just Montana State and NDSU. That's every team that we look at. And it really is dissecting that schedule.
So South Dakota State comes in at 3, South Dakota at 4, and then UC Davis at 5. How for the committee members evaluating that head-to-head South Dakota State, South Dakota game, how much is that held, I guess, down the road as well? I know we still have 4 games to go for most everybody. Some have 3 teams left. But that Jacks-Coyotes game, the head-to-head victory, Matt, how much is that, especially the Bison win over South Dakota State, how much do you tell your members that head-to-head has to mean something?
Well, it does. I mean, it does. I mean, especially in the moment. And again, where we are in this moment of time. Now, again, with 3 or 4 games left, a lot of things can still happen. So the value of that head-to-head may go away down the road, you know, if a school was to then, or a team was to lose 2 or 3 games or 2 games or whatever it is. So that's where it's not hard and fast, where I know sometimes people say, well, so-and-so beat so-and-so, they should be better in the rankings. But when you look at the full, again, body of work, that's not always the case. So, but no, I mean, I think for them, I think what resonated with people who watched that game is to go on the road against the 2-time defending national champion and play really, really well and have an opportunity to win. So I think that's where you saw South Dakota State kind of hold serve at that 4 spot, just because of the quality of their performance there.
The rest we're looking at here: Davis at 5, SEMO at 6, Idaho at 7. Idaho obviously has an FBS win. Mercer at 8, Incarnate Word at 9, and Montana at 10. Can you see? I don't know if you can tell us this, but can you tell what everybody else has voted, or is that closed off when you get the final rankings come out?
No, you can't. You can. It's it's anonymous when we do actually do the voting process. But what I would say is really good is, and that's where it's good to kind of go through this mock process a little bit as we do this before we get to Indy, is the level of debate before we go into each vote is really good. It is really, really good. And then even when we're seeding teams, we vote and then we debate again, and then we have a second vote. So really, again, I mean, I've always said, you know, our role and responsibility is to truly try to build the best 24 team bracket that we can and pick the strongest 14 at-large schools. And I think our process and the way we debate and go through and really vet all the teams, I think it bears out that way.
You've been on this now. How many years is this? 3, 4?
This is year 4.
Okay, because this is your last year on it, correct?
Correct.
What do you think I mean, you follow it as close as anybody, but knowledge from doing this now for 4 years, like what do you know now that maybe you didn't when you first got on the committee 4 years ago?
To me, I would say just the importance of non-conference scheduling. Because, and again, this goes back to when I was on the softball committee, you can't control the strength of your conference schedule, right? It is what it is. But where you can really make hay a little bit is through your non-conference scheduling. And so that's probably the biggest thing I think you've seen just in the last couple of years, the way we've attacked our non-conference schedule and trying to have games against power conferences and just some good cross-conference games that'll help when you get to this point. Because a lot of times we'll talk about is, you know, how is SEMO, where would SEMO slot in the Valley? Well, SEMO played Southern Illinois. That's a good data point. You know, or how does Towson match up in the Valley or NDSU in the CA? Well, okay, well, NDSU. So those things help. And so I really do. I think the value when you look at strength of schedule, your non-conference schedule plays a big part in that. And so I think that's the biggest thing I've learned is, you know, we've always tried to say, we want to try to schedule, if you can get to 8 wins in the Valley, there's a really good chance that you're going to be in the playoffs. And so trying to schedule that way, but also making sure it's a tough schedule, because again, that's where I said the difference between a 10-1 team, 2 10-1 teams, your path to get there can be very, very different. And so non-conference scheduling to me is really, really important.
Well, and that goes this year as well is unique because it's a 12-game season. So you have 12 data points, but if some teams, and I'll point it out, South Dakota and South Dakota State both played non-division ones, does that hurt them in the room?
Well, what I've always said, I don't know if it necessarily hurts you, but what I've always said is, you know, whether we also, you could flip it the other way. We have multiple teams who played 2 FBS games this year. Yeah. You know, and so the way I look at it is, if you don't win that, it's just less of a data point for you. I mean, it just is. And so that, again, we're still going to evaluate the games, that the Division I games, because we look at what's your Division I record. what's your record against Division I? And so we almost kind of pull out those non-D1. So it's just less of a data point. Now, probably less impactful in a 12-game year as it is when on an 11-game year. And so that's always been my thing. I would encourage people as much as you can. And I get it. Home games are hard to get and all those things, but I would encourage you, again, this goes back to non-conference scheduling. If you want to put together your strongest opportunity, I would say not playing non-division ones hurts you at some level.
Well, this isn't to pat you on the back, but because I know you did this scheduling like 4 or 5 years ago, but East Tennessee State and Tennessee State suddenly turned out to be really good non-conference games for you this year.
Yeah. Some of it is, when you schedule some of these, and Tennessee State was a little different. We scheduled that because, again, we wanted the opportunity to go to Nashville,
right?
And it actually has worked out well. I mean, they're having a good season in the OVC Big South, and so that's been credit to them. And then East Tennessee State, a lot of that came of they were here in the playoffs a handful of years ago, and just thought that was a really good opportunity. And again, they're always, when you look at them, they're usually in the upper echelon of the Southern Conference. So again, trying to get a data point against another league that's going to maybe have multiple teams in. And so I think that helps. And not only does it help us, but I think it helps the rest of our league. Yeah. Just how it does if, you have a school in our league that plays somebody else in a conference, it helps from comparison's sake. So no, I mean, we were a little fortunate. Sometimes it's hard, but you try to look at, okay, who traditionally tends to be in the maybe upper half of their league, and let's try to schedule those teams.
Looking at who's on the committee, it looks like as if we were to sit here now, there's going to be 5 people that are going to have to leave the room when their teams are discussed. How difficult is that, Matt, when you're obviously going to be one of them that has to leave, where half of the committee is going to be outside when they're talking about a particular team?
Yeah. Well, one of the things that we do also, it's called the conference monitoring system. So in addition, I represent the Missouri Valley Football Conference. And so I can advocate for teams there, but we also have another committee member who is the conference monitoring liaison for the Missouri Valley. So that person will have conversations with commissioner and football staff within the league to talk about the strengths. So if there is an opportunity, if I'm out of the room, we have another committee member there who's pretty well versed in the Valley, has had conversations with the league multiple times. And so that crosses every league. So for example, this year, the MEAC and SWAC, I'm the conference monitor for those. So I've already had 2 or 3 conference calls with those leagues to talk about who potentially in their league is at large. And so those conversations are having across all of the conferences. So there is that kind of checks and balance a little bit. So if both of those people are out of the room, usually before we leave, we can give factual information about our team or about the league, or we would encourage, hey, once you're done talking about North Dakota State, bring me back in. So if there's other questions you have about Valley schools or other schools, I'm participating in that. So that's where I think we've gotten a lot better at making sure we have the right people in the room for as long as we can possibly have them there.
My last question, and we talked about this yesterday. Now it's shaping up that regular season finale in Vermilion is going to be for a lot, and you're not. I know you want to be there, but you got to be in Indy. How do you balance that? Where you're obviously going to be watching the game, but there's obviously quite a bit at stake that could be potentially at stake for that game.
Yeah, that's always hard. That's been my first year on the committee was the first time that I've been at NDSU that I missed a game, and it was weird. You're sitting there watching it on TV, and that's what's neat in the committee room. We have, I don't know, there's probably 10 TVs going. So we're watching all of those games for most of the day. And, Ken Haslam, he was on the committee for 6 years and always missed the
Brawl of the Wild.
So, I mean, that, watching him stress, on those games. And so similarly, I mean, I've watched us play UND, USD, and UNI in there, and it'll be USD again. And certainly a lot on the line for that game. So that makes it a little hard, but there's a number of people on the committee that are in that same boat. They're watching their team maybe with a chance to get in. And I think if you look at that week alone, the playoff implications in that last week, if things kind of hold serve between now and then, are pretty extensive. So, sometimes there's years where a lot of the AQs are already decided, who's kind of getting in. This year, I mean, I think there's going to be it's going to come down to the wire in a lot of these games.
And I look at this, which is great. That's what you want, right?
Absolutely. You want to, have meaningful games going this late into the season, and it'll make our job more interesting, but that's what's great about this level of football.
And I'm looking at it here, the Bison play South Dakota. Davis is going to play Montana State. Davis plays Montana. This is all going to change by the time we get to November 24th. It's going to be wild.
And like I said, that's the hard part when you're doing this, knowing that there's still 3 or 4 games to go, truly trying to just isolate and say, we're voting on today and not looking forward and saying, wow, when they have a really easy road or a really tough road, or it's, the snapshot of today. But a credit to our committee. They do a great job. Our NCAA staff liaisons are phenomenal and just really set us up well for success.
Last question. When is the best time to go trick-or-treating? Like if for someone coming by, or is it right after work, when it gets dark, after dinner? That's our poll question today. What's the sweet spot?
Well, I would say it depends on your age. Usually before dark or right around dinner time is when you get the young families.
That's when we're going. That's
right.
So we're going.
And then as the night progresses, the trick-or-treaters tend to get older in age and probably fewer costumes, as the nights go on. So yeah, I mean, this is a big night at the Larsen household. We get the fire pit out front.
Okay.
I'll have a football game on. We'll have some hot cider or maybe something else.
Okay.
And give out candy.
Well,
so it's a fun.
Let me tell you something right now. Do not willingly watch the Jets. The Jets is the NFL game tonight, so don't watch that.
I'm watching a college game now. I've given up on the Jets.
So have I. Thanks for the time, bud. I appreciate it, and we'll see you this weekend.
All right. Thanks, Dom. Appreciate it.
Matt Larsen, North Dakota State Athletic Director, FCS Playoff Chair, joining us this morning to explain, I think pretty well, too, on the background of how those rankings came about. And again, it's just where we're at now. Doesn't mean this is where it's going to be when we get to Selection Sunday on November 24th. We'll break.